pre-COVID, Dig had a very homogenous core audience.
Almost 100,000 businesses permanently closed since the pandemic.
What does it take to completely reinvent a business when the world turns upside down? On this episode of Branded, Ben Kaplan sits down with Jessica Serrano, CMO of Dig.
Every single Dig location is run by a chef operator. In fast casual, that's kind of unique. Our mantra is that nice skills are life skills.
Before the pandemic, Dig was all about fresh vegetables and local sourcing. But when everything changed, so did they.
Telling that story of what goes on in our kitchens behind the scenes was the marketing play for the next chapter.
If you want to know how a company survives when its core idea is put to the test and what it takes to come out stronger, this is a conversation you don't want to miss.
What's somewhat ironic about cooking culture in America is that
Welcome to Branded. I'm chatting with Jessica Serrano, Chief Marketing Officer at Dig. And for those who aren't familiar, just to give us a grounding, I think Dig it's in the, I'd say, fast casual space. It was historically known as a very sort of vegetable forward menu. It was like locally sourcing ingredients for farms. Hence the name Dig is like, you got to dig stuff up, right, to eat it. There's been a brand evolution, which we've talked about, but talk about just like, first of all, the positioning in the marketplace in lots of competitors, various sizes, really big national chains to smaller, more niche local groups. Where does Dig fit in?
Yeah, you gave a great overview of Dig. Dig was founded in 2011, and it was kind of one of the first fast casual concepts that really put farm to table and build your own bowls on the map. But while that is still very much a part of the brand's ethos, we have evolved quite a bit over the past decade plus being in business. And so today, Dig still serves lots of delicious vegetables, but we're also really beloved for all of our craveable proteins. And the way that we source our ingredients is still very top of mind to us. We are very thoughtful and intentional, and we strive to deliver a menu that is minimally processed. So we're really proud about how simply our ingredients are prepared every day. We create marinades, we grill charred chicken right there on the line for our guests to see, and we serve roasted vegetables in really simple formats with oils and salts, just the way that we hope, would cook them at home. So while a lot has stayed the same, there's been some interesting evolution in terms of how we talk about that and show up to our guests in our existing long-standing markets like New York, but also in the various new restaurants that we've opened over the last couple of years.
And just to give a sense, we're talking, 30 plus restaurants in the Northeast, roots in New York, but expanded. I think a lot of growth, as we've chatted before, about between, sort of urban to suburban. Is the need to grow, open more restaurants, be in more markets, is that what is driving the move to sort of evolve from totally vegetable centric, or sort of let people discover vegetables, but through another vehicle?
Yes and no. So definitely, as we started opening in new restaurants, or new markets, it became clear to us that it was not a given what Dig stands for. As you mentioned, it's a really simple term, Dig, 3 letters. Is it an acronym? What does it mean? Are they selling shovels in there?
Yeah.
It just wasn't clear to folks. And so as we started to play around with that articulation, one of my favorite questions is to ask people, how would you describe Dig to someone? And, we would describe ourselves as mostly veg, some meat, no BS. We described ourselves as a veg-centric concept, and we would have conversations with folks. They would say, so are you vegan? Or, sometimes we describe our food as comfort food, and that would confuse people because
that means, it's unhealthy, but I'll like it. But okay, yes.
Yeah, it's a very loaded term. It means different things to different people. And so broadly speaking, it just became really clear to us that while people in Manhattan know and love Dig In, we couldn't take for granted that people knew what we stood for. So we needed to get really clear about what does really resonate with folks. And while we know that our vegetables are absolutely delicious and trying them is believing, what we started to realize is that they're not quite an acquisition driver. When we would open in new markets, we do lots of sampling, and sometimes it would be hard to even get people to try the vegetables because they would say things like, I don't like vegetables. And then we'd say like, oh, well, we have all these other great things too. And so we realized that we made.
So not unlike, I don't know. I think you're a parent. I'm a parent as well. When you have a little kid, you're saying actually marketing to general consumer is not unlike marketing to your kids, where it's like, okay, you want you want the dessert or you want the other thing. You need to eat your vegetables. It just like, you noticed it being an uphill battle.
100%. And so what we started to do, and marketing is an art and science. There were anecdotal insights that I could share with you that helped me to realize this was a problem. And then we actually invested quite a bit of time and process and resources into validating that it was and what was the solution. On the personal front, even my husband, he has always told me I don't like carrots. And then the second time, I had him try Dig. He loved Dig. It was a few years ago. And then the second time I went to order for him, he wanted something that had carrots. And I said, well, it has carrots. And he's like, I know, I like Dig carrots. So I'm like, interesting. Okay, so you got to try it, right? Like, we're not going to get you in the door if you have a preconceived notion about your relationship with vegetables. So interesting that there's a role for it in the marketing funnel, but for everyone, it may not be the thing that gets them to the top of the funnel. And so what we did was we leveraged paid ads to help us to identify what visual cues, what copy really resonated and converted. We tested these ads.
And when you say paid ads, I mean, there's different ways to do it. Well, one of the things that we like about it when we're a global marketing agency and we do it for clients is that you can, for actually relatively little ad spend, just have like a laboratory and test a bunch of stuff and use it more as like a testing platform, which I feel like not enough people do. People use it as an amplification platform, but it sounds like where you're going with this, if you're just having a creative lab and let's try all of these articulations and let's try different foods, you can like test and learn at relatively small spend. You don't need big sample size.
Exactly. And so that was a really big aha for me coming from, billion-dollar brands like Burger King, Taco Bell. I was used to spending a lot of money in the research process to get these answers. And so I had to think a little bit more scrappily about, okay, I'm not going to bring on a whole research firm to help me to answer this. So how could we, through Facebook ads, stand up, multivariate tests where we would do permutations of visuals and copy and audiences and see which ones convert. And it helped us to validate that even with our existing customers, what we found is when we showed roasted chicken and broccoli in the same ad, as opposed to an ad that's all broccoli, they were more likely to convert. And so that's when we started to realize that in addition to our roasted vegetable narrative, we actually had a story about cooking that we weren't telling. So we had spent all this time and years, and it was not for nothing. It was a very successful strategy, don't get me wrong, talking about how the vegetables got to your plate. But actually there was a story about once it gets to that back door, what do we do with it? And that was the thing that we started to tell more of a story about. People may not realize every single Dig location is run by a chef operator. In fast casual, that's kind of unique. Most operators are a GM, but every single person that runs a Dig actually has a culinary background. Our mantra is that nice skills are life skills. And so if you work at Dig, whether you're in the support team like myself or, washing dishes, you are going to learn how to cook in our restaurants. And so actually telling that story of what goes on in our kitchens behind the scenes was the marketing play for the next chapter. Again, also in this social media era, we've seen stories of folks getting fired because employees are showing what goes on in the kitchens. And we realized that's actually our superpower. And so we started showcasing our chefs as the front and center on our social and really opening up the aperture and sharing, these are our recipes. This is how we cook. This is how you should cook if you want to cook at home. And we found that was the key to helping us be more relevant and resonant in new markets, but also still doing so in a way that didn't alienate the core customer who has known and loved Dig for years for the veg.
Well, and what you said is interesting. I mean, I have a whole background, prior career before running marketing agencies and other things, but as an author. And one of the things, there's always two types of authors when you learn how to market your book, right? There was the kind of author, and I'm talking more about like the, nonfiction, self-help, practical kind of book. I wrote a book called How to Go to College Almost for Free. And so you had the kind of author that said I have all of these great tips and advice. And if you get my book, you will discover them, right? Then you should get the book and they're all in there. I don't want to reveal it now. You had that type. And then you had the other type, which was like, I am going to give you so much useful advice, relevant stuff to you for free. You're going to get so much benefit out of it if you hear me talk or on a TV show, that you're going to be like, wow, I learned this much, from Jessica for free. Imagine if I get her book, how much I'm going to learn and get. And it sounds like you and the social are a little bit adapting that, because I don't think it's done enough in sort of restaurant where it's like, yes, to experience your product, they need to come get it. But like, if you can educate and inform and empower on like how to do this at home on your own, there's times when you want to do it at home on your own. And there's times where you want someone else to do it for you and they're going to come in and that's more relevant to them. I think that's really smart.
Yes, that's a really great analogy. That is 100% the strategy. So, one of the things that we started implementing, for example, we launched crispy chicken. And to launch it, we invited influencers into the restaurant for See What's Cooking Day. And we just did demos. Here's how we make it. And we sent them home with the breading so they could make it at home. And so I think our audience really appreciates that we are trying to demystify cooking. I think what's somewhat ironic about cooking culture in America is that we have both an obsession and a real intimidation around cooking. I think it's the reason why these like cooking channels exist. Everybody, we've got all these celebrity chefs, and yet the average American only knows how to make 5 dishes. One of them is like scrambled eggs. So what is this like obsession we have, but also this fear? So by really kind of sharing how we do it and encouraging people to be more experimental in the kitchen, like there's enough good food to go around. We know that you're still going to come and eat with us because folks are busy and they don't get to cook every meal from scratch. But by showing them how to, it also shows them and builds transparency and trust about the way that we cook food, so that when they are busy and they want to eat what feels like a home cooked meal, they know they can get that at Dig.
Absolutely. And do you find, I know the other part that you've said that your brand has evolved is in terms of like just the lives and what's going on in the lives of consumers. So have you evolved? Cooking is obviously the like articulation of the meal, but food and family dinners and all of that also relate to lots of other use cases. For instance, I'm busy after, dropping the kids off at every activity, picking them up. Now we got to eat. That's a use case. There's the other sitting down on a Sunday evening and we're going to have, the one time we all sit down together. That's a use case. So do you find yourself sort of addressing those kind of use cases, or how are you addressing the lives of consumers?
Yeah. So historically, because we were so focused on the seasonal vegetable story, truly our innovation cycle was what is growing in the ground in spring. And that's still true. That's still part of our innovation process. But what we found was that every season, the marketing narrative was, it's spring. Here's what we cook because it's spring. And it wasn't creating a connection with our audience in terms of what's going on in their lives. And so now we're looking at, from a menu standpoint, yes, what's growing in the ground, but from a consumer standpoint, how can we tell stories that connect with our audience and what's going on in their lives, right? So we know in January, you're coming off of, you spent way too much money on presents, on eating out, you threw caution to the wind, you were eating whatever, and now it's January, you're cautious about how much you're spending, maybe you've made a bunch of resolutions, right? So now we're thinking about how us cooking plays a role in your life in January, right? We come into the springtime and we're thinking about what are the occasions that folks are getting together. So right now it's March Madness. How can we help you to put something on the table that's interesting for your guests, your friends, beyond, chips and dip? We're moving into Passover. We're creating a brisket. How can we help you by complementing maybe some of the traditional dishes that you're cooking at home, but maybe you don't have time to do roast a brisket that we're going to roast overnight for 12 hours. And so we'll take care of that part of your meal. And so this idea that we are ready for you to tap us in whenever it makes sense for you without judgment to make your life easier, that's what we're now looking to do. We're talking about the occasions of when you come out of the gym, on a Wednesday when you're trying to put a meal on the table for a family of 4. Like Dig has your back in every occasion. And so we're finding that those are more meaningful conversations to have with our guests than just showcasing why we're selling something tied to the seasonality of the item.
You spend a lot of time in marketing. You're like, okay, who's our target audience? Okay, we got that. What's our message to our target audience? And then the timing is usually like the third thing, which is like, okay, when are we running this campaign? It's a drive period, something else. But the idea of like, if you can, the more relevant you can be with that time trigger, you see all of your results increase. And it's one of the things we noticed. So like years ago, we noticed like, for our clients, we're doing all these campaigns around like the little quirky holidays, National Love Your Pet Day and National Margarita Day and, all these different ones. And we noticed that like all of our metrics were up when we used it well, because there was like an immediacy. There was a time trigger. I almost call it like the Taco Tuesday effect, which is like, you can go have tacos with your friends anytime you want, but there's something about like, ooh, it's Tuesday. It's Taco Tuesday. Like, yeah, let's go have some tacos. All right. Like that shifts the experience when it's like it's a timely connection with others. And there's some kind of trigger that, and it sounds like too, what you were saying was that, yes, when things are grown is a timely trigger, but most of your audience is not like out there, harvesting the vegetable on this day. It is timely, but not necessarily relevant to that. Let's increase the relevance and keep the timeliness.
Exactly. That's so well said. Yeah, and what you described is somewhat Pavlovian. People are so busy. So how do we create those brand associations with things that resonate with what's going on in their lives? And so for Dig, pre-COVID, Dig had a very homogenous core audience, which is young office professionals in Manhattan. People were working 5 days in an office. They could come down. They had the discretionary income that it was a good value for them to spend money on a nutritious and really like nutrient dense meal that then they could get back to their desk and get back to their day. That was very like Dig really owned that category entry point, as I would call it. And then we came out of COVID and there was a ton of migration, right? Some of those folks moved to other cities. I can't tell you how many calls I get on with folks that go, I used to eat at Dig all the time when my office was on, XY Street corner. And now they're doing the same job from North Carolina or whatever, right? And so we saw folks leave the city. We saw folks now coming in 2-3 days out of the week. And so suddenly it didn't really make sense for Dig to only focus on one day part. It was too narrow of an occasion. And it kind of broke my brain because Dig is actually really great dinner food. And yet that occasion mindset association between Dig as a lunch spot ended up being somewhat of a barrier to getting people into the restaurants for dinner. And so that's also part of what this cooking narrative helps us to do, is to also be thought of as a solution, not just when you're at your desk.
Lunch on the go, but now you're cooking, you're preparing, telling that story is relevant to that.
Yeah. And then the one thing that is universal as we move from urban markets with young professionals that live alone or with a roommate or with a significant other, do not have children. Now we're more marketing to folks that live in Stamford, Connecticut, Bridgewater, New Jersey, Ashburn, Virginia, that now they are in the next chapter of life where maybe they're parents, they have young kids. The thing that is universal between those two groups is they're busy. And they want to eat well. So you go from talking to them about how Dig can support your busy lifestyle as a young professional, but the universal truth is the same is true for a busy parent. And so what we've done is also expanded our menu to speak to that as well. So we were really, truly only selling bowls for a long time. And we've since evolved the menu to offer Dig family dinners, where we're now bundling food that can serve a family of 4. And we see that items like that, we added a kids menu as well, has helped us to be more relevant for more use occasions in not only the suburban markets, but also urban markets where there are also families where maybe we weren't just as top of mind because we were so anchored as a lunch occasion.
The ability through consistent communication to sort of suggest use cases. I'll give you an example of a brand we've done a lot of work with that's like really good at that. You wouldn't think of, is actually Milk-Bone. Like Milk-Bone, the dog treats, right? Because if you think about the use case of a dog treat, I mean, when you're using it, you don't really, I mean, you yourself don't, presumably are not having the dog treat, right? But it's like a moment of connection with your dog. And so Milk-Bone strategy is a day part strategy throughout the day, because like you wake up, you're rushing off to everything. You're going to take the dog out quickly. You don't have a lot of time, but you want to show them that you care. Okay. A Milk-Bone can do something there. And maybe, it's a different toy, like in the afternoon, someone else is at home, or you just get back, you're back at home. You want to express you've missed your dog. Okay. A Milk-Bone can do that. Or heck, we're even going to show it's your furry soulmate on Valentine's Day. That this is, so it's like Milk-Bone is very explicit in trying to be like, you don't automatically know how to use the product throughout the day to have a closer, more loving relationship with your dog. But we're going to remind you about all these moments and all these things, a way to do it. That's going to help us sell our product. But ultimately, we're in the business of helping you deepen the relationship with your pet. And we're going to remind you all the ways to do it. So that is a brand that is very, very cognizant of like, what is the day part strategy? And we want to own the entire day for when we're going to be relevant.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, as a dog owner, that definitely resonates.
Well, and what about do you have certain foods? I mean, you sort of said like, vegetable forward, not as easy maybe to get like, people through the door or ordering in the app or things like that. But have you noticed any particular foods, flavors, what's trending now? It seems like we go through this like, kale is hot, kale is not. Avocado toast is everywhere. Oh, avocado toast is already done. Put bacon on everything. Don't put bacon on things. Like where are we now, if you're going to sort of say like your front row seat to like food trends and what works and what gets people sharing and talking?
Yeah, that's so funny you say that. The ubiquity curve, as we call it in food innovation. So honestly, it's protein right now in a lot of ways. So last year we launched crispy chicken, and as you're probably aware, the crispy chicken wars were like raging in fast food. Like Popeye started it all with that sandwich.
I have a story for you about that, but keep going with what you're doing. I do have a story for you on crispy chicken wars, but keep going. Yeah.
Okay, I love a good Popeye's crispy chicken story. And so that was definitely something that we're on the sidelines for that, you would think. But what ended up happening was Chef was playing around in Stamford in our one of our new markets. And so he was playing around with specials, just trying to see what resonated, because this was one of our first non-Manhattan openings. And he started selling this chicken paillard, which is basically like breaded chicken. But we were selling a lot of it. And so we were sitting and looking at sales and going, what is going on? Why is he selling so much of this chicken paillard? And it kind of quickly became clear, like, it's because people want crispy chicken. Like, we can do a fancy expression of it, but we started to say, like, what if we put it on the line and let people build their own bowls? And we just saw that it was really resonating with folks. And so then we're like, well, what if we put it in one more restaurant, just see, like, is it a fluke? And it just like, wherever we put it, it's sold. And what felt really right about it for Dig was that while everywhere else it is fried, it's baked. And so that ended up, we started asking folks that were buying it. I mean, truly what I did was I sent an email to the people that had been ordering this. And I said, can we get on a Zoom call? And can you tell me why you're ordering this? And it became very clear that it gave them permissibility. And so there is something really interesting about Dig's menu and the balance that it affords. So you can build a bowl that's all veg, right? You can have broccoli, carrots, kale Caesar salad. And then if you want to throw in some crispy chicken, you could do that at Dig. And that felt different than like maybe a gut bomb of indulging a fried chicken sandwich elsewhere. And then this year we added steak to the menu, and it's selling like gangbusters. So I think folks are really looking to have interesting protein of innovation and just looking to balance out their diet with things that are nutrient dense. And so that's been a really winning formula for us, is continuing to offer protein variety. So
we loved activating on these holidays moments so much that years ago I created this platform called nationaltoday.com. It gets 10 million visitors a month. It is the most popular platform in the world for these like unusual and quirky and viral holidays. We create hundreds of these holidays per year for huge brands and lots of PR agencies and stuff like that. But what was interesting was we were doing things around, I think it was National Chicken Sandwich Day. We did a ranking. We have a division of what we do. It's called Wise Voter. We're a market research agency. We survey people, and we ranked the favorite chicken sandwich for every state in the US. And this result of this, so we did this, the United States of chicken sandwiches, what ranks the best? We surveyed, and I think CBS this morning ran the results of our study on their morning show. And we got panic calls from CBS because it was causing an influx on their site. People were taking it down because people were so like passionate about the chicken sandwich. And they're like, we need more details. And people were asking, how could you rank in this state, Popeyes over this, and what it is. And they said, we've never seen this much. Like, what can we do? Do you have more details? People want to know our methodology. We were just citing you. What do we have? You're taking down our site with information about fried chicken, national morning show. So there you go. We learned, oh, wow, people are passionate. They love about their chicken sandwiches. And sometimes I think in that crowded space, having a unique approach, a unique way to sort of break through the noise. Like I actually love I was like, why, how come there is not is there a National Baked Chicken Sandwich Day? Like, oh, that's interesting. Should there be one? I think having like a differentiated thing that aligns with your value proposition, that aligns with your brand, is great. It's almost like when you do something like that, like fried chicken sandwich, you don't have to create the wave. The wave exists, but you can like sort of ride it in your own direction just by having a spin on it that sort of takes it in a different direction.
You're so articulate. That was so well said.
Well, you're kind, but thank you. I get passionate about this, but I like where the brand is going for you guys. And I'm interested to see, like, maybe to wrap up, what's next? Like, where do you obviously there's growth, there's expansion, you have new markets, you have menu innovation, but like, what's the rest of the journey that the brand has to go on to realize its potential?
You're ending on a very tough philosophical question, one I'll probably be thinking about long beyond after we end this conversation. I mean, I'm really excited about the trajectory of this brand. I feel like we still have a lot of wood to chop. I mean that in a good way. As I mentioned, I've worked on legacy brands that have, 90% household awareness, from Dole to Taco Bell to Burger King. And so for me, even though, when I'm in Manhattan and I talk to folks and I say, oh yeah, I work at Dig, and they go like, dig in, there's that affinity and recognition. There's still millions of people out there that don't know about Dig, have never had it. And that excites me.
But what do you take from you've worked at Burger King, you've worked at Taco Bell. What do you take from brands like that? Like, what can you learn and apply to Dig now that have made Burger King and Taco Bell be lasting brands, in sort of fast food space?
Yeah, I think what those legacy brands do really well is create mental associations that helps them to resonate. When you think about Taco Bell, there are certain things that come to mind, like the gong that you hear at the beginning of each ad, the color purple as it's woven throughout the brand. There are all these like little brand kisses, for lack of a better expression, that just help reinforce the brand. And that's what builds that affinity over decades. And so that's part of what, we're trying to do with this brand today is, even what you described, and the reason why it's actually not surprising to hear that there was this influx of engagement with the fried chicken day is because food is the great equalizer. I've only worked in food, and this is why I love working in food, because it is a universal experience. It is the one thing that you can talk about with everyone and they have a point of view about it. And so figuring out what are the pieces about the Dig experience that are truly special and differentiated, and how do we help more people understand, demystify, and have that experience, that's the work that we'll continue to do. And so over the next several months, we'll open new locations, some of which will be in, entirely new markets for us. And I'll get to do that again.
Are these all company owned, or are they franchise?
Yes.
They're all, okay, all company owned model. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. But I have another idea for a national day. So we should, talk about that offline. I don't want to give away the idea here.
Okay, very, very good. We will do that. Thank you so much for joining us. Jessica Serrano, CMO at Dig. Great evolution from New York focused brand concept. How do you evolve it to have an even bigger audience, grow into new consumers, and certainly also another example of like a post-COVID business, finding new ways to reimagine its audience, turns into e-commerce. I know we've chatted before, 50% of your business is actually done through a digital avenue or channel. What an interesting story thus far, and interesting to see where the brand goes. Thank you for joining us.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.